how is it right that somebody who spends their entire life working their ass off, somebody who lost half of their hand in the name of a job, cannot even be able to cover the cost of their own damn funeral when they die? Ding dong YouTube, welcome back to the channel. I'm the Jobless Coder, and today I wanted to talk a bit about my papa. Yesterday was 1 year since my papa died at the age of 80. He had his 80th birthday just 2 weeks before he passed away. I was the only one of the 8 grandchildren who wasn't at the funeral. I was the only one of the grandchildren who never got to see him before he died. I was fortunate enough to get to see him over a Skype call shortly before he passed away. And that was a very emotional time for me, being out in Vancouver while the rest of my family was here in Alberta. Now, my papa had something rather unique about him that I'm assuming not all of you can say about your own grandparents. You see, he had a hook for a hand, the thumb on his right hand, and the index finger, and that was it. Because when my papa was 16 years old, he was involved in a sawmill accident at his job that lost him 3 fingers off his right hand. The saw went and it chopped right through here all the way down and took that off. And so for the rest of his life, he was left with just his index finger and his thumb. Now, he was born right-handed, so he basically had to relearn everything and how to operate with his left hand, including writing and use of basic objects with his left hand. And this was rather apparent, as he was never really as good with his left hand as he was with his right hand. When you're born with a specific hand at birth, it's very hard to change that. Certain things like birthday cards from my grandparents, you could tell that it was written with somebody who wasn't used to or wasn't born with the ability to use that hand. But that was what was so unique about him, was that it didn't stop him from doing so. Initially following the accident, he was actually rather depressed, because he figured his life was over. Because he just assumed that with only half a hand, he would only become half a person. And this depression actually drove him to the point of suicide. My papa considered suicide several times when he was younger. And had he actually done so, neither myself nor my father would have been here. But the one thing that stands out the most about my papa, more than the fact that he only had half a hand, was that he was the hardest working man I have ever known. When he was younger, in his 20s, he actually had connections to the rock and roll industry as a producer. He worked for a variety of different music companies and record labels, and he played the guitar himself. I don't think he was ever in a band. Like, you can't go and find an old band or something and say, oh yeah, that's him on stage playing. I don't think he ever did that. But he knew a lot of well-known rock and roll people. And when he got married and had 3 children, of which my father was the oldest, he actually worked 2 or 3 different jobs just to support the family. At the time, they were living in Toronto, and so my papa would deliver papers for a good sizable portion of Toronto. In addition to that, he would deliver mail at the post office. At one point, they owned and operated a rather sizable chain of jewelry stores, and they had investments in other jewelry stores. So he was a businessman too. I remember when I was younger and growing up, my nana and my papa were living in the same town as my parents, and they actually owned and operated the local gas station. And both my papa and my father used to work there, and my papa would run the store, and it was basically a family business where everybody took part in running the store. When they were eventually bought out and they were shut down, we got all of this stuff like store shelving and a slushy machine even. We had a slushy machine in the backyard for the longest time. Coolers and fridges that you put the pop and the drinks in. Eventually, he retired and got on a pension plan, and he'd been paying into it his entire life with his career and the different jobs that he worked. And I think he's part of that generation of the elderly that you work your entire life until you're 65, you retire, and then you get a pension and you live in your golden years. And to some extent, that was rather true. He had a very big, rather expensive motorhome, and while my nana was still alive, they would travel down to Utah, travel down to Arizona every year, spend 6 months down there, and so he did get the opportunity to live in the, quote, golden years. But the sad reality is that my papa went bankrupt shortly before he died. The cost of the funeral had to be funded by the 3 children. And that's why I personally have no interest in a retirement savings plan or RSPs or whatever you want to call it, 401k if you're in America. People like Robert Kiyosaki talk about this all the time. There's no point in putting your money and your investments into these when you should be buying assets that are generating cash flow on a continuous basis. Because the problem with the retirement savings plan is that when that money runs out, it's just a big lump sum of money, and it may be stored in the bank and they may pay out per month, or they may just give you a big lump sum of money like they did for my grandpa on my mom's side. He just got a big lump sum of money. But when that money runs out, if you're still alive, you're practically screwed. How are you supposed to live now? And then you wonder why you get these elderly people that are 70 or 80 years old and they're working as a Walmart greeter, the same job they had in high school practically. Or maybe they're physically unable to work anymore, and then you know what happens? They end up homeless. And does the government seem to care? No. I mean, there's this huge problem in BC, right now in Vancouver, with homeless people on the street that are elderly.
There is a misconception about many people who live on the streets. Some work their whole lives, but as they age, they end up without a place to go. How does this happen?
Well, I think a lot of it is, again, back to, did we save enough? Was there enough of a pension saving? A lot of pensions are going by the wayside. And again, rent is going up, our medical bills are going up, and our income is not staying with it. We're seeing individuals go back to work to supplement, right? I think we have a stereotype that we vision homelessness to be.
It's not that.
But it's not that. Is, you know, when I get asked, you know, who's homeless today or who are you seeing at the emergency shelter, I say I see the employed, I see the underemployed, I see the unemployed, I see the disabled, I see the retirement.
The government doesn't care about taking care of you when you get to your elderly years. They just want you to die and go away. I mean, I already don't expect the government to take care of me at all when I retire, quote, retire, if I even live that long. And they won't care whether or not you've spent your entire life to dedicated service, whether or not you were the hardest working man on earth. When you go bankrupt, that's not going to stop them from taking your car and your house or your big-ass motorhome. And to be completely honest, my papa was embarrassed about this. This was a secret kept from the entire family for quite a while, that he actually filed for bankruptcy. And it wasn't really revealed until he died. Now, I think that there's something seriously wrong, seriously broken with the system. Ask yourself this: how is it fair? How is it right that somebody who spends their entire life working their ass off, somebody who dedicates their entire life to a job, somebody who lost half of their hand in the name of a job, and almost their life too, cannot even be able to cover the cost of their own damn funeral when they die? Now, I get it. Not everybody's concerned with material wealth. When you die, you can't take it with you anyways. My papa died just the same as Steve Jobs died, just the same as Bill Gates will one day eventually die. And none of them can take the money with them when they die. But I don't personally think it's right that somebody who has been promised for their entire life by the government that you work until you're 65 and then you get to live your life in paradise cannot even cover their funeral when they die. Now, maybe I'm just wrong. Maybe I'm just set in my ways. Maybe your grandparents have experienced something different. And I don't really know how my papa really felt about filing for bankruptcy. I know it embarrassed him. I don't know if he honestly really cared or he felt taken advantage of and lied to by the government. But I sure as hell would. If I had worked my ass off through all my younger years, at the expense of everything, at the expense of losing body parts, at the expense of becoming suicidal, and then I retire at 65 and then I go bankrupt and lose everything I spent my entire life working to earn, I'd feel taken advantage of. But maybe that's just me. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments below if you would feel the same, or whether or not your parents or your grandparents have been through similar experiences. Other than that, that's about all I have for this video. I just wanted to make a little tribute talking about my papa now, 1 year later. Thank you for watching the video. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Hello, loneliness. I think I'm gonna cry. Bye-bye.